Hi, my name's Amber Brexman, and I want to talk to you about non-traditional assessment within the reading workshop. I have been teaching fifth grade for the last 13 years, and out of those 13 years, I have been teaching the reading workshop and writing workshop modules for primarily the last 8 years. And I'm super excited today to share with you some of my knowledge about assessment that doesn't always require grading and can help really push for your students to learn. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about what that assessment looks like, and I kind of going to give you a quick overview of what reading workshop assessment is, and it's just going to be touching on the brief edge of it. In reading workshop, you are going to be assessing for learning, not doing an assessment of learning. So like this map here that I'm looking at and we have on the screen, you can see that there is a very obvious path from the house to the castle. It's direct, it cuts the diagonal, and it will get you there very quickly. This is the same as what most assessments are that teachers use in the classroom, those summative assessments. They are quick and easy. We give them at the end of the unit. We are testing to see if students have learned it. It's an assessment of their learning. Did they learn those skills that we just taught them? And it's usually at the end of a unit. It compares classes or students, and there's a common rubric. We don't have all these different differentiated things for students. But let's just say that I'm wanting to actually assess for learning. And I want my students to, go by the beach, take some samples of the sand, look at the water, and those kind of things, and see if they can learn something. Taking that direct path isn't going to give them that experience. And for me as a teacher, it's also going to be a lot more work. I mean, you can look at that path, it curves around, it winds around. It isn't the path that is the easiest. We're going to have to work a little bit harder. The same can be said for the other road that looks a little bit straighter there. If I want them to go out and spend the night at the campground and make a note of the nocturnal noises that they hear, taking that direct route, they're going to avoid that altogether. And so sometimes the direct route and assessment is not always the route that we should be taking. We want to be assessing for learning. So it's ongoing. Students are self-evaluating and analyzing their work. They use rubrics, journals, portfolios, book clubs, peer reviews, and all sorts of different types of assessments. So looking at this slide, we can see that here are some types of formative assessment. The types that we've been talking about before are summative that you might be familiar with, which are those end of the unit assessments and that are easy to grade. Here's where the gray waters start. Student observations, homework, reflection journals, or in our case, my classroom, it's binders, Socratic discussions, student-teacher conferences, peer review, informal presentations, portfolios of ongoing projects, project-based learning, think, pair, share, visual thinking strategies, and critiques. I am going to touch on a few of these that you see listed here. I'm not going to be able to touch on all of them, but I want to share with like my most favorite ones to use and how they have helped shape Reading Workshop to be what I feel is the best fit for my classroom and to show that assessment for learning versus of learning, and how I know that my students are learning what I want them to learn. And ultimately, my goal is to create readers. And so I want to make sure that they are developing a love for reading as well. So the next few things that you're going to see on this video are some pictures of my students in the classroom in the reading workshop. And you're going to notice that I have it set up in a typical classroom. I don't use desks, we use tables. This makes great for group work. I can group my students quickly and efficiently working at tables. We also read around the room. I have several comfy things. You'll see kids that are having discussions, students making notes. They are laying down. We have read outside. It just looks very different than a typical reading class. And one of the first things that I do with my students when they come to reading class is I have them fill out this reading inventory so that I can get to know them as a reader. I want to know what their likes are, what their dislikes are, and just so that I can help them pick out a book. This is the first time I get to observe the students, and it's in their written work. I'm always up front with them and tell them that reading is my favorite subject, but it doesn't have to be theirs. And I understand that there's going to be things that they don't like or love about reading, and I want them to be honest with me. But I also want them to be honest about what they do like. What are their hobbies? What have they read in the past? Did they enjoy any picture books? Are there any other things that I need to know about you? And have you ever been inspired to read? This is just a great get to know me tool for my students and kind of gives me a glimpse into what I can refer back to all year to pull books for them when they say, I can't find anything to read. I use this. The next thing is I take a grade over books. We do send a note home at the beginning of the year. I send a note home that parents sign about how this is going to look different this year. You're not going to see the worksheets maybe you've seen in the past. You might not even see homework come home other than I expect your child to read. But we set a goal of 30 books read by the end of the year. And that seems like a lot for fifth graders. I require chapter books to be 100 pages. I want them to be challenged. And it seems like it might be unattainable. At this point in the school year, I would say that I already have at least 10 to 12 students who have hit that goal, if not are within a book or two of 30. I think when you set this goal high and you let them know that you don't think it's impossible, they rise to that challenge. And parents also push them. And so I take a grade and I tell them, you need 3 books by the first midterm, 6 books, by the first 9 weeks. And we build on that all year. And it is just shocking how many students can do that. And this is the sheet that they use to keep track of how many books they've read and the genres I'm expecting. I keep a Google Drive document so that I can have it time stamped and I can see that I've conferenced with them. It's also a tool that I use to know when I conference with a student last, and when I have talked with them. And the paper that you're going to see coming up here is one that I don't grade. This is the paper that they fill out when they finish reading a book. Now, I could grade this paper, but I feel like it gives it a negative um, connotation to it. This is really just a tool that I use to launch a conference. When they finish a book, they have to conference with me, or it does not count, because then I can tell if you've read the book or you haven't. And they have to include text examples in their answers. And so I sit down with the student, we talk about their book, and I use these questions as a springboard for our conversations. It isn't the only thing that we talk about is just on this paper. I want to hear more about their book. I might even talk to them about strategies we've been doing in the class just to see. And there are kids that do try to fool me. But like I said, I don't use this as a grade. I feel that students wouldn't, I don't know, want to fill them out as much if they felt like they were being constantly judged. It's just a tool for me to use and springboard and to have a conversation about, and one for them to keep track of in their binder. Not everything in the reading workshop, and by no means when I say this, it should be graded. You would kill yourself. So you don't grade everything. A lot of it is just so that you, as a teacher, know your reader and you know if they're learning and where you need to hit them. This is one of those tools, okay? The other one that I do use a lot, also an ungraded assessment, is called the status of the class. And I do this one every other day. I have found that fifth graders, if they think that you're going to do it every day and they know they're going to be called out about what they've read, will lie to you. So on this paper, you can see that there is like 9 weeks, and there's a paper for each student. And I put them in a binder, and I ask them the title of their book and what page number they're on. You can do each day of the week. Like I said, I do twice a week, and sometimes they're different days. And I can see like, oh, Monday you were on page 114, and on Wednesday you're on page 115. That's a problem. And so I'll kind of say something, and I do this in front of the class while we're sitting up at the carpet. So there's some peer accountability as well as teacher accountability. And then you can also praise, wow, you were on page 114 and now you're on 187. goodness, you read, all these pages, and you can really just praise them for that, and they glow. And then you also know if a student finishes the book. They'll say, I finished the book, I'm working on paperwork, and I make a mark of an F, and then I put no paperwork yet, or paperwork waiting on conference. And it lets me know also for that day who I might need to go and touch base with in conferences. Just another tool to use to keep the kids where they're supposed to go. I also launch book clubs in my classroom when students are grouped into either the same book. Sometimes we still read a class novel. I feel like that there is value in having a discussion over the same book. And then other times I might have 17 to 20 different novels going on with book clubs on top of students reading their own independent books. So it's a lot of books to take in. It can be 82 different books along with the 17 different book clubs. And so, how do I keep track of if the students, when they get together to talk in their book clubs, are actually doing what they're supposed to do? How do I know if the skills that they're talking about they're addressing? And I started using the Socratic seminar method, but I tweaked it a little bit for book clubs. And so we did it over a Percy Jackson novel, a group did. And one thing that they did was I had a circle on the outside. It's a fishbowl method. And they use this rubric that you can see before you on the screen to track one student. They were each in charge of one student, and they watched how many times they asked a question, how many times they contributed, and those kinds of things. And then the kids on the inside are the only ones that are allowed to share. And then I just sit back and observe. And the discussions that come out of this are so powerful. I have come to realize that all book club conversations are very powerful if given the right guidance for students when they sit with their peers. But this seems to be a very valuable approach. And so if you want to take the next 30 seconds, I've included a clip of some students talking about the Percy Jackson novel. And I do take a grade on conversation that is had using this rubric and some notes that I also have myself. I also apologize for the poor sound quality on this video. You may have to crank up your volume to really hear the students speak, but the conversation was pretty meaningful.
Yeah, the friend who betrayed him was, which is Luke. So I was thinking, is Luke going to betray him more than once?
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Because, like, if you think about it, people were saying that the prophecy that might not have been all of the prophecy. Like, maybe that isn't what they actually meant. Maybe it was later on. Because they do have other books in the series. So, yeah, so, because people kept saying,
I am just scratching the surface of the ideas that you could use in Reading Workshop when it comes to assessments. Here are some few ideas that you can also use that give quick informal assessments. Sticky notes. You have a skill you teach that day. You want to know if students are using that skill. Have them write it on a sticky note. Turn it in. Put it in their book. Turning and talking. Turn and talk to a partner. You walk the room. You listen. I have them do binder entries, and I grade those, and I have a binder rubric. Just observe the readers. Sit back, watch what they're doing and how they're reading, and just observe them. Table Talk Twitter. I cover the tables with giant sheets of paper, put a character's name in the middle, put a problem in the middle, and all the kids can do is write about what is on that paper. They're not allowed to talk. And then I have two projects that combine writing and reading, which is my Academy Awards and my Wax Museum. They also require an oral presentation. So it just really ties together all of those standards and skills that I am trying to make sure that my students do know for the classroom. So how can I really tell that those students are learning and that they're really making progress? Well, this December I decided to try what we call a book tasting with book clubs. And this picture right here is just a small sampling of the fantasy book clubs that I had going on in the room at that time. So as you can see, I have 13 books on this table. I think I had almost 20 total. And so students were set at tables with people that did not read the same book as them. And they got marshmallows and hot chocolate, and they had a worksheet that they filled out about their book. And then on the back, they had to write about other people's books that they listened to, and if they would like to read it, and if they wouldn't read it. And so they got to hear other people talk about their books and kind of what we call take a book tasting or a sampling of other literature. And then they got to pick out books. And by the end of the day, those books were all gone. In fact, I had probably 100 books to reshelve, and not one of them made it back onto my shelves. And after we did this, the kids were so excited about hearing about the books and just being able to sit in a group and discuss them that we got out some white sheets of paper and we went through all of the books that we had read this year, and we decided to see just how amazing this group had done. And I had them write down the number of books they had read, because to me, even reading one book is a victory, as long as you really, really understand it. And my first group here, which is reading group 1, this school year has read 453 books. My second group has read 421 books, and my third group has read 509 books, which is a grand total in December of 1,383 books. And we're only halfway through the year. I mean, to me, this is what I want. This is how I know that I am teaching learners and I am assessing for what matters, because they keep doing what I ask them to do. And isn't that our goal, is to create kids who have a hunger for reading and knowledge and learning? So I hope you learned something today, and would love to tell you more about assessment and reading workshop. I could go on for a long time, but I think these pictures here at the end speak for themselves.